This one, I miss it. You know, when you have your favorite food from your childhood or something, and you're eating it, and you've been looking forward to it for a long time, you haven't had it in years, and then you go to take a bite, and you realize that they changed the recipe. And it's not that it's not good, but it's not what you really wanted.
The Five Nights at Freddy's!
And welcome back to Five Nights at Freddy's.
This is Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
Welcome back to some more Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
This is Five Nights at Freddy's 3.
Muss ich hier mehr bekommen, wo ich okay, ehrlich gesagt.
Five Nights at Freddy's steht.
The scariest game of all creation. Probably never heard of it. It's called Five Nights at Freddy's.
How did we get here? How did a franchise that was built on story and identity feel so void of both? Well, to understand that, we need to look back. Scott Cawthon, who we all know now, wasn't always this super acclaimed developer. Originally born in 1978 in Bell County, Texas, and as a kid he spent a lot of time drawing and also playing NES games, it seems. But besides those two things, something that really had a big influence on Scott was his local church growing up. You see, Scott during this time was a devout Christian, and I know that might seem a little strange considering what he would go on to make, but a lot of his first projects had pretty strong Christian themes. Later in life, he would go on to study animation and design at the Art Institute of Houston. But while doing this, he worked odd jobs while making games and animations on the side. Most of his early work flew under the radar, but deep down, he knew he always wanted to make video games. A pretty risky decision, considering his animations were the only thing really keeping him afloat at this time. But he knew it would pay off in the end. So he got to work and started releasing titles during this time, such as Sit and Survive, which was a simple backyard survival game, or Chipper and Sons, which is basically like a beaver and his dad running a lumber mill, and The Desolate Hope, a pretty strange platformer RPG about a banded robots on a lonely space station. But sadly, nothing seemed to take off for Scott. Sales were bad and reviews were rough, and the worst part, people absolutely hated how his characters looked since they were so uncanny and creepy. And they weren't wrong, to be fair. Scott almost quit making games altogether, and FNAF was supposed to be one of his last games. And he finally decided to lean into what people were saying. If people said his characters were creepy, maybe he'd actually try to make them scary this time. In 2014, he officially released Five Nights at Freddy's, and the game completely blew up. It was probably impossible during that time to find someone who wasn't playing it. And what's crazy about just how much traction the game was getting, at its core, the game is super simple. It feels kind of redundant even telling you what it is, but here's a quick summary. You are a night security guard working at a seemingly haunted pizzeria, and thanks to your limited power supply, you're vulnerable to spiritual haunted animatronics. But what made the game different to so many people was the story, or actually the absence of it. See, throughout the game, you're never really told what's going on, and that just fucked with people so much, since it's clear that there is a story. It's just not told through regular means. Instead of having dialogue or cutscenes, the first game was told through posters and some magazine clippings. And remember, this is 2014, and what seems like major horror game staples now was back then basically never heard of, and kind of flipped the script to what we thought a traditional horror game was supposed to look like. And the game snowballed into popularity, exactly due to what we just mentioned. And it seems Scott's trail of losses and fails was finally over. He struck gold, and Scott was completely aware of just how popular this game was. And due to the community's outrage, he got straight to work on a sequel. Well, I guess it's technically a prequel, but that doesn't matter. Just a few months after the first game's launch, Scott Cawthon released Five Nights at Freddy's 2. but this time launching with a trail of hype behind it. And at surface value, it's everything the fans wanted. It was bigger, it was scarier, and of course, it expanded the story. Not by really solving anything, but by making us ask even more questions. And that just fueled the never-ending fire of the community's love of mystery when it comes to this game. And that's how the next cycle of FNAF games usually went. Scott Cawthon was constantly outdoing himself every game that came out, whether that be new gameplay elements or just new ways to tell the story. But by the 5th game, the community had a pretty well-rounded idea of just what this series was about. We knew it had to do with the Afton family and how William Afton, the seemingly co-owner of the company who ran the pizzerias, committed some atrocities to unknowing victims, and these victims would be the ones to start the story in the first place. But as the narrative got more and more clear, it was apparent that something was growing within the community, and that being the need for some type of closure. You see, we're already 5 games deep, and as a community, it felt like we had all the pieces. We just didn't know where to put them. But again, Scott was listening, and on December 4th, 2017, he released Five Nights at Freddy's 6, and it seemingly gave the fans what they wanted, a definitive end to the series. After years of theorizing and countless videos on the topic, we finally had an end. And it would have been perfect if that was truly the end, but we all know people cannot let the cash cow die. And thanks to that, now we're here. But what exactly did they do wrong? Well, it all started with Help Wanted. There's no doubt in my mind, I blame Help Wanted. You see, the game came out 2 years after what was supposed to be the end of the series. And from the looks of it, it was just supposed to be a retelling of the games. But we all knew they couldn't help themselves. They had to add some new things to the story. And to be honest, we probably all could have expected that. That's not surprising. It would have been completely fine if it was small things. You know, just some stuff that made us question a couple things. Or maybe even shed some light on stuff we didn't really know. But they didn't do that. Legitimately, in the first 5 minutes of the game, it is revealed to us that none of the games are actually real.
Fazbear Entertainment has developed something of a bad reputation over the last few decades, and while it's true that some stories associated with our name were loosely based on actual events, the majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic. Lawsuits pending. But we aren't above laughing at ourselves. Ha ha ha. That's why we have recreated many of these completely fictitious scenarios, lies that you've been fed over the last several years, into a hilarious VR game.
Which now makes us question everything we know about the series. And in my opinion, what's even worse than that, in the same game they introduced Glitch Trap, which is its own hard to understand, confusing thing. And this to me was the beginning of the end. You see, also around this time, Scott started working with a bigger game company, and it's clear that they wanted to move forward with the story, far past the point of the original series. But there is a problem with this, or at least the way they're doing it. You see, this is where the real identity crisis begins. You see, the main story, the one that made the franchise iconic, it's done. It was done in 2017. We have our ending. The story had a beginning, a middle, and to be honest, an amazing end. And instead of letting it rest, it feels like every game kind of weirdly and unsuccessfully keeps trying to bring it back. And they do this by adding more and more lore and introducing new characters, while also having weird meta twists to the story that make things even more confusing. And it feels like we're stuck in a cycle of half-explained retcons that feel almost opposed to plot points that we thought were pre-established, and to be honest, disconnected to what made it special in the first place. Take Security Breach for example. It had an insane budget, and ultimately it looked beautiful, and I liked it. I binge watched the entire thing because I had COVID, And even I can admit, the story was so bad. It was seriously all over the place. It felt like a sequel and also a soft reboot at the same time. Like, how did we get from FNAF 6 to everything being destroyed to this? And the DLC was somehow even worse. In my opinion, alright, there are people who really like the new game and DLC. And the excitement for the series is still there. It's just now mixed with confusion and exhaustion. Because at its core, the game was never really about jump scares or possessed robots. It was about the mystery and the feeling of you and 1,000 other people solving this puzzle in real time. But when this puzzle is already solved and you just keep adding more and more pieces into it that don't feel like they fit at all, you're not adding any mystery to it. You're just devaluing the puzzle. And to me, that's the heart of it. The series can't go back. That story is wrapped up, but it also can't go forward without dragging that exact story behind it. And now we're here, or we're in the present now, with the new game Secret of the Mimic finally releasing. And to be honest, I like it. I played a lot of it for myself actually, which I usually don't do. I usually watch other people play it, but I had a great time playing it. And to me, it does feel like a step in the right direction. I care a lot more about it than I usually do, the story-wise. I still don't understand like half the stuff from the last game with like the weird, like, I don't even remember his name, the purple bunny guy, and that supercomputer thing that's supposed to be important to the story, I guess. But I do generally care more about the story because of this game. So I'm hopeful. I don't have all the answers to what they should be doing, to be honest, when it comes to the story. It is a genuinely hard thing to do, especially to move forward this type of story when your core audience is like the most die-hard fan base ever. I don't know, I just saw that Markiplier video and I wanted to talk about it. I think I'm gonna call that there. But also, thank you to the guys who commented on my last video. That was pretty cool of you guys. That feels so weird to even say because I never thought I'd actually make a video until like a month ago. Also, I messed up my job at Levi's, so yeah, I gotta put more time into this, which is not bad. I don't know what my next video is gonna be, but goodbye.